it's Andy, and today I am bringing to you my 22 favourite books of 2022. This was an idea given to me by Catherine. I had been debating whether or not to do my favourite books, and Catherine suggested why not do your favourite 22 of 22. So I scoured my shelves and grabbed my favourite 22 books of 2022. So this video is meant to go up in 9 minutes, so this is probably not going to happen. If I get it up today, which is Tuesday the 20th, it's Friday the 20th. If I can get it up today, that would be a miracle. I've been having a horrible migraine for the past couple of days. This is day 2 technically, but it started like the night before, like day 3 technically. So yeah, I look like hell, but I want to get this video up. My headache's a lot better. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better. And I was like, do you know what? I really want to get this filmed because I want to get these books back on my shelves, and it would bother me more them sitting there than just getting on with it, because I actually feel not too bad. So Alice, you can stop yelling at me. I feel fine. It's fine. The painkillers have kicked in. I've had food. I feel much better. I may not look it, so just forgive me. And I have lost all ability to know what the hell is going on with my hair. So yeah, hair will be like this. So yeah, without, rambling on any further, I'm just going to get straight into my favourite books of 2022. So the first two I'm going to talk about are ebooks, because I wanted to include some of the ebooks that I read. The first is The Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was an ebook that I read while I was getting my hair done, the first time I got it like cut and dyed, like last year. And it's a very short ebook. The full story is told in letter format. It's really stuck with me. It gives very Evelyn Hugo-esque vibes, like it's set in, I think, like the 50s or something, and this woman has discovered that her husband is having an affair with the other main character's wife, so she writes to him and sort of just confirms the affair and asks if he knows anything about it, and yada yada, and they start to talk to each other, and they, through talking to each other because of their spouse's affair with each other, they start to fall in love. And it's a very, very short, like I said, very, very short ebook, but I absolutely loved it. Don't know what it was, but there's something about it that really, really stuck with me, and I've thought about it ever since. The next ebook I want to mention is Start a War by Elle Thorpe. Really, it's the trilogy, the Saints View Cycles trilogy. You've heard me talk about this a few times this year because, again, it's something that's really stuck with me. So Elle Thorpe looks at a lot of different things within these novels. They are, they're KU, smutty novels, but at the same time they also deal with poverty and what it's like to grow up in intense poverty, and looking back on the people you've left behind when you kind of manage to get yourself out of the poverty. Like, she goes to live with her dad, who's like rich, after her mum's boyfriend starts looking at her like she's, ready to sell as a prostitute. So our brother's like, hell no, we're getting you out of here. And then brother calls her one night, and while he's on the phone to her, he is shot and killed, and she races to his bar to find out what the hell's happened, runs into her brother's best friend who runs the bar with him. They go find her brother dead at his house, and it all starts from there. This is a reverse harem romance, so it's 3 guys and then our main character who's Bliss. So there's Bliss, who is a plus size woman who is discovering this bar and the secret sex club that they have in the basement, and the 3 guys are her brother's best friend, an assassin who's just gotten out of jail, escaped from jail, who also has a split personality, so there's 2 personalities. It's referred to as DID, it's supposed to be DID, but I have lots of thoughts about that I'm just not going to get into. And then there's the sort of president of a biker gang, and it's such, it was such a nice, I can't even think of how to describe it, because like I said, Bliss is plus size, and Bliss is ashamed of her body because of her ex, who, by the way, somebody needs to deal with. And through these 3 guys who are all completely enamoured with her, and through her best friend who she meets at the bar, she learns to love her body, she learns to love herself, she learns to not feel ashamed, to feel sexy, and to feel wanted, and to feel good about herself. And that book did that so much for Bliss that it made me feel more confident in myself, it made me feel better about myself. Not to mention just I don't know, there's just something about her writing that I absolutely loved. I blasted through all 3 of these books, just one after the other, and I'm absolutely open to reading more of her novels. Again, I'm really impressed. If you want to read it, please look up trigger warnings. There are a lot, and I wish I hadn't read the epilogue. Right, sorry if anything's changed. Kay just phoned me, and hopefully it doesn't crash like when my mum phoned me. The video's meant to be going up right at the second, and now it might take me 3 days to edit. I can't remember how much I said about Elthorpe and Start a War and Save Few Cycles, but we'll stop there. So next is The Storyteller of Casablanca by Fiona Valpy. This is a historical fiction novel set, so it's between World War II and sort of present day for the book. I debated between this and Next Year in Havana by Chanel Clayton, because that was also a very good book, but this had a higher rating on Copile. This is, like I say, a split sort of timeline. So you've got Josie in the past, who is, I believe, Jewish, who's escaped to Morocco with her family when France has been occupied by the Nazis. And then you've got Zoe in the present time, sort of 70 years later, who is newly married. It says, is struggling with her marriage, her baby, daughter, and a new life as an expat in an unfamiliar place. But when she discovers a small wooden box in a diary from the 1940s beneath the floorboards of her daughter's bedroom, Zoe enters the inner world of young Josie, who once looked out on the same view of the Atlantic Ocean, but who knew a very different Casablanca. This, I can't say any more than this because it would just be too, like, a big reveal spoiler, but this, I love World War II historical fictions that take place in different places. So, like, this obviously takes place in Morocco and Casablanca, which is not somewhere that you see very often told in World War II historical fictions. I absolutely love this. I kind of want to reread it again, just to sort of refresh myself, because this was one of the, like, earliest books I read, but definitely at the time I know I really, really enjoyed it. Going again with a historical fiction, it's Codename Helene by Ariel Lohan. This is a historical fiction, World War II historical fiction, based on this real woman who was a spy who airdropped into France and helped basically the resistance in France to get supplies, things that they needed. She organised a lot of it from the British side, and she was just incredible. This woman took no nonsense. Like, these men tried to intimidate her and she was like, cool, talk to me and I'll shoot you in the face. Like, this woman, I love this so much. I love this new introduction we're getting to women in history. The fact that so many women were used as spies and pilots and things like that during World War II, and we're just not told about it. It's absolutely mind-boggling that we're only finding out about these women now, but I am so glad to be part of the generation that's getting to find out and celebrate these incredible women. Definitely worth a read, but it is, she does not hold back either, so just be careful. Next up is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This is a middle grade-esque book about a boy called Bod. His name is Nobody because he arrived at the cemetery with no name. As a baby, he just crawled in there and he was being chased by a man who just killed his entire family, and he was adopted by the spirits, I suppose, that live in this graveyard. And it basically is about Bod growing up in this graveyard while this man is still looking for him, and the spirits that he spends his time with that raised him. It's just an all-round good time. It's got that spooky feeling that you'd expect, but it's fantastically written, fantastically told, and it's the one Neil Gaiman book that I actually like. If you're surprised to see this next one on my favourites list, then I don't know what to say. That is The Love Hypothesis by Ellie Hazelwood. This is the first in Ellie Hazelwood's STEMist novels and novellas that she's doing. These are all about women in STEM and sort of romance stories that get a bit ridiculous. This is a fantastic sort of rom-com type thing. Apparently it started off as like a Kylo Ren Rey fanfiction. I didn't know that before I read it. I only found out that after we did it, so that didn't really affect my enjoyment of it at all. Like, it didn't sway me one or the other because I didn't know about it. But I absolutely love this. You've got Olive and Adam who are working at the same university. So Adam is a professor and Olive is a PhD student. As a PhD student, you also have to do lectures and things like that as well. And Adam is known as this, researcher, scientist, lecturer, whatever, who is an absolute terror. He is horrible, he is nasty, he is blunt, and he takes no prisoners, and Olive knows him by reputation but has never really met him before. And then because she wants her friend to know that she is over her ex, who she dated for like 5 minutes and then her friend was interested in, she was like, you take him, it's fine. To try and convince her that she's totally over him, when she sees her friend, decides to kiss the first guy that she comes across. Unfortunately for her, that means Adam. So he walks out of his room and she grabs him and she kisses him, which is obviously the cover scene. This then turns into a fake dating trope, which is incredible. I love how just these two interact. It's such a grumpy sunshine. Olive is she's like one of those characters that's so smart, she's dumb. And I relate to Olive so much. Like, some of the things that she does, I'm like, I hate it, but I would do it. And Adam's funny. Like, Ali Hazelwood's characters are really funny when it comes to the men, because the men are very stoic and very quiet in a way that means that the women tend to project onto the men. So Olive projects a lot onto Adam that Adam isn't actually thinking or feeling, which causes miscommunication because she is misunderstanding things that he is saying or silences that he is sort of giving, if that makes sense. But yeah, I've read this twice this year, maybe 3 times, and it really just, it was, I don't know what it is about it, I just really enjoyed it. Next up is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This is the first Christina Lauren book that I read that sort of told me that I would love Christina Lauren. This is about it's like an enemies to lovers romance. So our main character, Olive, what's with the Olives? Our main character, Olive, her twin sister, identical twin sister, is getting married, and she is the maid of honour, and Ethan, who is the groom's brother, is the best man. They hate each other. They met years ago, had a horrible interaction, and have never really gotten over it since. But Olive is allergic to shellfish, and Ethan does not eat from buffets. So once the wedding happens at the reception buffet, it is a big seafood buffet. And neither of them eat it, and they are the only ones that do not end up with terrible food poisoning. So Olive's sister and Ethan's brother decide that they should go on the honeymoon, pretend to be them so they don't lose out on, like, they're not allowed to move it, they can't get the money back, anything like that. So they have to pretend to be them, to be the married couple, and go on this honeymoon. So there's sort of fake dating, so they pretend to be married, only one bed because obviously it's a honeymoon hotel suite, forced proximity because they're in Hawaii on this island, they can't get away from each other, they have to do things together to be convincing. And I didn't realise how many of these tropes that I loved, but fake dating, forced proximity, only one bed, those are my favourite tropes. The family in this as well are so supportive. They're like really judgy but also really supportive, and I just loved everything about this book. And there are a few snafus along the way. It's not just like a quick romance novel, there's very much plot in this, and it just hit all the right buttons for me. Next up was a book that wrecked me, and that is You've Reached Sam by Dustin Tao. This book, I put off getting or reading this book. It is a YA kind of romance. Is it an anti-romance? I don't know. Basically, our main character's boyfriend Sam dies in, I believe, in a car crash, and our main character just wants to hear his voice one more time in her grief, and so she calls his mobile, and instead of getting his voicemail, Sam picks up. He is very much dead. It's not one of those mistaken dead things. Sam is very much dead, and this is the sort of journey of our main character learning to not necessarily accept, but sort of grieve and move on from Sam's death. Slowly as you get through the book, the communication gets weaker and weaker as Sam helps her through, the grief. And it just was so beautiful and so heartbreaking, and I cannot tell you how much this affected me. My friend just read this recently and just like, she was bawling. She was absolutely bawling. It's one of the, it's such a hard hitting book for a YA. Like, they're in high school, or Sam is going to university, and I think the main character is about to go to university as well, or is just in her last year of high school. So it's very much a YA, but it's very much dealing with grief, and I think it deals with it beautifully. So yeah, I definitely think this is a fantastic read. Probably not for everyone though. Next is The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. This book is another one where I pushed against it and I was totally surprised. So this is about two characters who end up in a flat share. So what that means is that it is a one-bedroom flat in London, and our main character has just sort of been kicked out by her boyfriend, who's a twat, by the way, and she moves into this flat. She is let in by the tenant's girlfriend and never speaks to him face to face, never sees him. They share the flat, so 12, so like she gets it from like 8 till 8 and he gets it, like, so they get 12 hours each. They never cross over, they never interact other than these post-it notes that they sort of put together, and I wasn't sure how it was going to work, but it just works. It's not over a very lengthy period of time, which I think helps. I'm like, what about 6 days? What about, like, in the long run, they've not thought it through, but for a novel, it's a fantastic way of doing things. Obviously, his girlfriend ends up being a total horrible person, and our main character and him end up falling in love through these post-it notes when he's no longer with his girlfriend, and I just really enjoyed it. It was so strange because it discusses so many things, like the fact that they're sharing the same bed but never sleeping at the same time, and yet there's still that question of, like, she's like, that is still quite intimate to share a bed with someone even if you've never met them. And it sort of, I don't know what it was about this, I just loved it, but at first I was really resistant to it. And there's so much, I mean, if you can't deal with certain tropes, so like, I know there's people that have problems with stalking, maybe don't read this, because her ex-boyfriend is really problematic. Paramount just did a series for this, a short series for this, and it was really good. But yeah, I don't know what it was about this, I just really enjoyed it. Next, we're moving to something that's not romance for once, and that is The Dark Vault by V. Schwab. This is the archived and the unbound. But I'm going to discuss the archived. So the archived is a story about our main character whose name is Mackenzie, and Mackenzie is a keeper, and what that means is she has access to this place called the library. So the library is where the archived, which are our spirits, basically our souls, go after we die, and the librarians keep the souls, and they're all sort of stacked in this library. No idea why, nobody actually knows why, and sometimes these archives wake up and they're called histories. So sometimes these histories wake up and get lost into this in-between place. This is like a hallway with lots of doors, and the keeper's job is to go into this hallway, collect the histories and take them back to the library. Obviously things happen in this, but a lot of it's a discussion about Mackenzie and a relationship with her grandfather, who was a keeper before her, because the keepers recruit their own protege, as it were, because they don't tend to, it doesn't just pass down in families or anything like that. They have to train someone. And Mackenzie was very young to become a keeper. Her grandfather died when she was very young, but he had trained her. She was given his key, and there are other librarians who help look after her. Her family are also dealing with grief because her younger brother was recently killed, and they moved to this new place where she is assigned a new territory as a keeper. She also meets another keeper who is just the best character. But then there's also a history that used to live in that building, and there's something going on there. It's kind of mysterious, and she's trying to figure out what's going on. It does get a little bit dark, but this totally blew me away. I liked this better than I liked most of V. Schwab's other works, so I'm so glad I got a chance to read this. Next one is The Devil You Know, Encounters in Forensic Psychiatry by Dr. Gwen Edshed and Eileen Horn. I don't know if that's how you pronounce Gwen's surname, but that was my best go at it. Basically, Gwen has been one of Britain's leading forensic psychiatrists for years, and she has worked in places such as Broadmoor and has done so much for the sort of criminal legal side of psychiatry, forensic psychiatry. And I just loved this. This was Gwen's job in life told from the perspective, or told in snippets of each patient. So there are different patients here. So you've got Tony, Charlotte, Marcus, Kezia, Gabriel, Jamal, Sam, Sharon, Lydia, Ian. So she talks about each of these different people. Names are changed and identifying features are changed, obviously, so you don't actually know who she's talking about. But the idea is to have this discussion of mental health, and the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. This looks at mental health and forensic psychiatry and mental illness in such a compassionate and caring way. She treats her patients like people, not just as criminals or as less than human because they've committed criminal acts. Some of these people are murderers. Some of these people have done things that a lot of people would say, you know, throw them in and throw away the key. But that's not the way Gwen looks at things. The way Gwen looks at things is to look at them as a person, to figure out what got them there, what happened, how can we help them in the system, because you can't just throw someone in a box and leave them to die. That's not how we should be treating people. We should be treating people with compassion and care. And also at the same time, if we can figure out how people get here, maybe we can find a way to stop them getting there in the first place. Some of these people, one of these, I'm sure, I think one of these guys that was in here, it was either in here or a Broadmoor show that I watched on TV, his family history was generations and generations of abuse, and he wanted to break that cycle. He said when he left Broadmoor that he was going to break the cycle. He became a criminal. Yes, he did bad things, but it was because he was abused and because of the precedent that set up. So he turned to drugs because he wanted to get away from the abuse, and it sort of spiraled into causing him to commit crimes and causing him to have a lot of problems. He did also have, I believe, schizophrenia, which did not help. You know, schizophrenia, being abused by your own parents, by everybody that's meant to protect you, on top of drug use, it's not a good combination. If somebody had been able to help him as a child, we don't know where he would have been. And breaking the cycle of generational trauma, looking after those who have mental illnesses, because we are not in the Middle Ages now. We can help people who have mental illnesses. We can be more compassionate. We can break this cycle that leads to people having to commit crimes to finally have treatment and get the help that they need. And that's what I love about Gwen, is she views the world in a way that humanises people who otherwise may not be humanised. Next is a book that absolutely blew me away, and that is The Roommate by Rosie Danan. This is fighting for one of the best books of all time. Like, I don't even think I have a limited list. This is just one of the best books that I've read of all time, because this is a smutty romance. Like, you find it 30 pages in. This is a spoiler if you don't want to hear it, mute me for the next few seconds. You find out 30 pages in that one of the main characters is a porn star. So basically, I'll wheel back a little bit. So Clara is supposed to go and stay with, so her family's like important and political, and she always has to do what she's told, behave, be the good girl, that sort of thing. And she decides she needs to get away from that for a while, so she goes to live with a friend in LA. A friend who she's had a massive crush on. She's been in love with him for years, and she thinks maybe this is the chance. And when she gets there, she discovers that he is just leaving because his band are going on tour. And he's like, you can still have the house, it's totally fine, like, you know, you stay here, I'll be away, I won't bother you. Oh, by the way, I've rented out the room to someone else as well, so you'll be sharing a house with a random that I found on Craigslist. And she's like, I'm sorry, what? Turns out that is Josh Darling, who is one of the best male protagonists I've ever seen written down. Josh is a porn star, and she finds out this, and it is obviously a totally like sideline for her, because she sees this as a more depraved profession. It's certainly not the done thing when it comes to like her family and the way they're presented and yada yada yada. And there's, you know, this book has a massive discussion about the sex work industry in general, regardless of where you start and end that conversation, like sort of umbrella term. It has a conversation about it, and you learn through Clara, through Josh, that, you know, this reputation that it's been given is very, very wrong, and the way that people in sex work are treated is absolutely horrendous, and really we should be doing better by them. At the end of the day, it is the world's oldest profession, and I don't see why people shouldn't be allowed to do any sort of sex work. Like, literally, who cares? Like, if you're not hurting anybody, do what you want. Like, just... And they should be treated better in general. I could get into a whole, like, video essay about this book and about the way it talks about the treatment of people in the porn and sex industries, women in these industries, because you know they get it tougher than the men, and the way they're treated, and it's just fantastic. Like, this is a book you go into for a good time and you come out learning so much. I absolutely adore this book. Next up is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I struggled to choose an Emily Henry. Well, no, right. I wanted to have more than one Emily Henry on this list, but I decided to choose only one, and that was Book Lovers because it's my favourite Emily Henry by far. Emily Henry just keeps getting better with every single book they write, and this was just beautiful. This book, by the time I read the prologue, I was sold. Like, this main character, she is the person that other people leave. So like she says it herself, like Nora has been through enough breakups to know that she's the one men date before finding their happily ever after. So basically, like, you know how you have that trope where someone goes to, they're from this big conglomerate and they go from London to this tiny little village, and they are there to buy over this bookstore, say, or cafe or something, to add it to the conglomerate and ruin the sort of mum and pop style version that it is currently. They then fall in love with the owner or the owner's daughter or whatever, and then they decide to try and help save it, and they dump their girlfriend who is back in the city and is like, well, why don't you just do your job? And everybody's like, she's cold-hearted and just industrial and nasty. That's Nora. She's the girlfriend, and I love that this doesn't end up in Nora being like, oh, now I understand why they fall in love like that. She's still like, absolutely not. My life is in the city. My job is in the city. I love my life. I'm not leaving it for anybody. Like, absolutely not. I just love this book so much. This is my favourite Emily Henry by far, and that is wholly down to the character of Nora and the hijinks that she gets up to in this book. It is just incredible. Please read this. Next up is another hard-hitting non-fiction, and that is This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. Adam Kay was a OBGYN doctor in the NHS for years until something caused him to decide to quit. And this book, there's a TV show about this, but this is the TV show tie-in. This basically is his diaries as a junior doctor, and it's explaining, you know, things that happened through his time and what led him to quit. It is unreal. I can't even explain to you. This just shows how poorly our NHS is treated. Our doctors, our nurses, our porters, everybody within the NHS is treated so poorly, and it is the reason we're hemorrhaging doctors and nurses and specialists, and we are hemorrhaging staff that are fantastic at what they do. We are hemorrhaging these life-saving, incredible human beings, and the government stands there and goes, oh, I wonder why we're losing so many. This is why. Because you treat them like crap, you underfund, and they go through severely traumatic things, and you just shrug it off, or you expect them to shrug it off. That's not how it works, and the government needs to do better when it comes to the NHS and our doctors and nurses, etc. I have nothing but respect for Adam Kay, for so many of the doctors that work in the NHS, doctors, nurses, everybody that works in the NHS, and especially after them having to go through a pandemic the way that they did. It's befuddling to me how anybody can still look at that and go, yeah, they don't deserve XYZ. Because yes, they do. Give them more pay. Give them free therapy. Give them what they want. I don't care what it is. Give them what they want. They deserve it. And, you know, if I was able, I'd go and strike with the nurses. I'd go strike with the ambulance staff. I don't care how much it inconveniences me. Like, they deserve better, and it shouldn't have come to this. It's been years. Adam has not been in the NHS for years, and yet the treatment is still no better. So yeah, this is very gory, very triggering, especially considering I worked as an OBGYN, so there is a lot of, you know, talk of labour and delivery and C-sections, things like that. So if that's something you just can't handle, I would say avoid this book. But everybody else, please read this. Listen to doctors, listen to their accounts. Just look at what they have to deal with. Please, I beg you. Okay, next is something I said I wasn't going to do, and that's two books, which is Immortal Rising and After the Bite by Lindsay Sands. Lindsay Sands is a vampire romance paranormal sci-fi writer who also does historicals, but I like the vampire ones. And she releases a book every 6 months, which is why I got both of these in September. I literally get these books and read them straight away. Lindsay Sands can do no wrong in my eyes. They're just... I'm so invested by this point. This is like book 34 and 35. I'm beyond invested at this point. I don't have very much else to say. This just carries on. So for anybody who does read these, this one follows Stephanie and Valerian. And the one thing I love about each of these books is that it's a series, but it's kind of a standalone. So each one follows a different character, and you've seen those characters in other books that are focused on other characters. So you see them from so many different angles, and you learn to love them. And when they get their own books, you're just like, yes, yes, I want to see them be happy. These are romances about science fiction vampires. I could talk about this series for ages. I might do a reading vlog for the series and just really go into it because I absolutely adore it and I cannot wait for the next one. Okay, I broke the rule again. It's Maria Lewis. Is anybody surprised? I literally could not choose between these. So there's The Rose Daughter and The Witch of Courted Death. I want to say that The Witch of Courted Death kind of edges out The Rose Daughter, but then I think about the historical part of this and I'm like, nah. So The Rose Daughter follows Dreckley Jones, who is a true sprite in this world where vampires, werewolves, they all exist. All the vampires are like low on the food chain. The werewolves are kind of top, and then you've got sprites, banshees, all these different creatures, and Dreckley is a sprite, which is illegal. She is the daughter of a Selkie and a earth elemental. They are not supposed to be allowed to breed, as it were, and Dreckley is kept in prison with her father as a very young child, and her father helps her escape, and from then on Dreckley is on the run. And she is just the best. It follows you through her life, and she ages extremely slowly. She has been alive for hundreds of years and has lived through like World War II. She was a spy during World War II, and that's just incredibly well done. That side of it, it breaks your heart. And I just love Dreckley. And Dreckley's also the Selkie family that she comes from is an Asian Selkie clan. So she is half Asian or part Asian, or I'm not sure how it works with the elementals and the Selkies because supernatural creatures don't work exactly the same as humans do. But basically she presents as an Asian woman, which throughout history has sometimes helped her, sometimes hindered her. It's one of the reasons they had to get her out of America during the Second World War, because they were putting all Asian people in internment camps. Because yes, America was awful during the World War as well. It wasn't just the Nazis putting people in camps. And did you know that Hitler actually decided to plan his concentration camps off of inspiration from America? Yeah, so basically, love Dreckley, love her story, and you basically just follow. This is the bigger series. There's like 8 books, and it all ties in, so I can't say much more. The Witch of Courted Death is about Casper, who I think you've heard me talk about this before. So Casper and Creeper are twins. They are mediums. Again, mediums are very rare in this world. And one night, Casper and Creeper are attacked. Creeper ends up dead. Casper ends up losing her arm from about here up. And this follows Casper a year later as she's dealing with this. Creeper's still with her because she's medium. She can see ghosts. He is there. So they're still technically together. And she is basically trying to find and seek revenge on the people that have killed her brother and are still after her, while also trying to find out why they're after all these supernatural creatures, because they have taken like 3 werewolves, 3 vampires, 3 this, 3 that, and like they need like parts of them and things like that. It's so interesting. And then you've got another character, I can't remember her name, who is a witch who has escaped from Australia, and she ends up, Casper needs her help, so she kind of finds her accidentally but on purpose, if that makes any sense. And after trying to kill Casper a few times, she then decides to help her. And you know, oh no, it's not 3s, it's twins, because she's a twin. Sorry, it's twins they need, not 3s. I'm going mad. Because she's hiding because her twin was killed as well. So then they end up, you know, obviously falling for each other, kind of enemies to lovers, kind of like friends to lovers. It's just, I love it. I love Casper so much. Absolutely love Casper. So yeah, I will be doing a dedicated reading vlog, rereading all of these books and reading the finale for the first time. So that will be a very, I think, emotional reading vlog. Next up is probably my most surprising book of 2022, and I don't think it is what you think it's going to be. It is in fact The Host by Stephanie Meyer. I know. This book, I really enjoyed the film. It was fine. It was good. It was a good film. And then I decided to read this book and I was like, wow. It's so much better written than Twilight. The idea is so much better than Twilight. I really, really enjoyed this. I really, really enjoyed the conversations that it had. It is a chunker of a book, but dear God, did I get through this fast. Basically, there are these souls, they call them, which are effectively these creatures that can take over bodies of other creatures. So they live on nearly every, or they're trying to colonise effectively every planet on the universe. They are a very peaceful race. They live in pure harmony with each other. So for example, on Earth, shops don't have money, you don't have to buy anything. You go in, you take what you need. There are no crimes, nothing like that. They all live in harmony with each other. And they can live for as long as they want, because they just jump host to host to host to host. And they can go to different places. And when they come to Earth, obviously we fight back. And this is about one of these souls getting put into a host who is refusing to let go of her own body, but is also part of a resistance. So she ends up going and finding this resistance, and at first they don't trust her until they realise that the human soul is still there. And it's just, I love this. This was so good. And I really am surprised at that, because I did not think I was going to enjoy this. I already soft DNF'd this, but I decided to pick it up, give it one more chance, and it just hit in the right time. But yeah, like, this is just, I really enjoyed this. I think Stephanie Meyer just knocked it out of the park. If she'd released this first, we would all been jumping on it. Next up is one of the books that you're expecting to see on this list. If you're not, then where have you been? It's Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. I could have gotten all 4 of these books, but I'll just take one as a representative. Heartstopper is about Nick and Charlie, who fall in love. Basically, they're in high school. Nick doesn't realise that he's bisexual. Charlie's out and gay. They meet one day in their form group and become friends, and then Nick quickly realises that he has feelings for Charlie that are not just friend feelings, all while trying to navigate an all-boys school. And they have friends who are in the all-girls school next door, and it's a graphic novel. It's very easy to read. It's all on webtoons. It's beautiful. I now have 4 editions of this one, of the first one. I absolutely love Heartstopper. I'm so looking forward to the 5th one being out. It's nice to have it complete. I know a lot of the time you're like, you don't want it to end, but knowing that it's complete, because these characters first show up in Solitaire, which is Tori's story. And you know, at that point they're in a committed relationship. The comics make no sort of, well, like, you see comics of them grown up as adults, still together, so you know there's no sort of fear. It is purely just watching their love and watching it bloom and watching them have to deal with a lot of things. There are a lot of things, especially in the later graphic novels, that you need to watch out for triggering subjects such as anorexia, mental health issues. There's a lot of bullying, because Charlie was bullied when he came out, or when he was outed as gay. So just watch out for that. But it is just the most heartwarming story, and Darcy is just, like, I love Darcy. I love Darcy, I love Tori, I love Nick. Like, it makes my little heart happy. Next is another book that I did not think I was going to like and ended up loving, and I need the sequel yesterday, and that is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. This is a contemporary fantasy-esque alternate history novel. So Her Majesty's Royal Coven was brought about by Anne Boleyn, and it is witches, female witches, who work on behalf of the government. And this is modern day, so it's not anything to do with the original, it's just that's how it came about. And this child has been found who they believe to be the Silly Child, and the head priestess of HMRC gives the child to one of her friends from way back to kind of figure out their powers and their abilities, because they shouldn't have the abilities that they do. So in this, male warlocks are a lot weaker than the female witches. So there's HMRC, but there's also another group that's the warlocks, and this is basically post-war with, like, the warlocks and another sort of group, and about these 5 friends who've kind of grown distant from each other. And it's just, I can't do a good job of describing this book. There's so much going on, and yeah, it's so well done. It's just fantastic. If this was like a 10-book series, I would read it, but I think we're only getting a duology, so it'll be out in June, so I can't wait to reread this and then read that. And the last book that I read, one of my favourites again of all time, and that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This book is a geek's dream, basically. This book is a historical fiction. I will argue that till I'm blue in the face. This is a historical fiction with some magical realism fantasy in it. It is not a fantasy novel. If you're a high fantasy reader and you do not like historical fiction, do not read this book. Basically, it is an alternate London, or alternate world, and our main character Robin is taken from Canton when he's a young child and his family have died, taken to England to be brought up by this professor who will act as his sponsor to go to this place called Babel, which is a school within Oxford University where they do like silver working, which is part of the magic system. It is all based around languages, so if you like etymology, if you like languages, if you like linguistics, this book is for you. It talks about colonisation and how that's a bad thing, and it is not just that colonisation bad, it has a deep discussion about colonisation, the effect that it has, the effect that translation has on words, on meanings, on just... It's so well done, it's beautifully written, it's so well done, and the discussions are just so on point. The discussions on privilege, the discussions on colonialism, on using someone's background for your own benefit, and it just... I again didn't think I was going to like this book, and it's just rocketed up to one of my favourites of all time because the discussion of this and the fact that R.F. Kuang manages to wrap this up in one book is truly admirable. It is a very heavy read, it is a very long read. It is about the same size as HMRC, but this one will take you longer. It is a slower read. Do not try and rush through it. Please do not try and rush through it. And I cannot tell you enough how much I appreciate the discussion of etymology and the discussion of linguistics in this book, because that is something that I get really geeked about. I love words, I love the history of words, how words came to be, how words evolve, how things change, and how translation isn't straightforward. Like, there are things, you ever hear someone say, oh, there's a word for that in German, or a word for that in Dutch, or a word for that in pick a language that doesn't translate well to English. That kind of discussion is had in this book. It's just, oh, I love it. I love the etymology discussion. If it was just about that and had none of the action going on, I would have loved it. But the action as well, and the stand is very like the students in Les Mis, where they take a stand and they know that it's not going to end well, and it's just so good. Okay, I had to put that down before I actually freaked out and just went on a total tangent. I have about an hour's worth of footage again. If this crashes, because Kay phoned me, I'm going to cry, so wish me luck. If you're seeing this video, it means obviously it went well. If you saw the graphics for the first two books that I talked about, then things went well. Thank you so much for watching. Again, thank you for piling through a video that I have an hour of raw footage for. Not sure how long this is going to be for you, but I suspect minimum half an hour. Yeah, if you read any of these books and you want to freak out with me, please message me. Like, I am ready to freak out about any of these books. If you have read these books and have any thoughts, please let me know in the comments. Please just let me know. If I've inspired you to pick up any of these books, please let me know. I will be like staring at you until you read it. And yeah, again, all my links down below for ways that you can support me, get free trials and things, are all in the description. If you want to subscribe, like the video, anything like that, that really helps. And I love growing a community to talk about books with, especially some of these books that not many other people read. So if you've read any of those and you want to engage with me, please do. Yeah, so thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.